Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Rutherford County School Board work session. First order of business tonight is the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Board Member Jim Estes. Thank you, Board. If you would look at your agendas for just a minute, is there any changes, movements you'd like to have on the number 4 or number 5? Okay, if not, of course, we could have some visitors and some other matters on Thursday night, but let's go to number 8, which is recognition on page 10 of your agenda sheet there, and
That'll be
Mr. Director.
That'll be Thursday evening too, and I think we've got some of the be recognizing, which I'll probably give the chance to Mr. Bonio and some of the others to recommend some of the kids that did very well, not only statewide but nationally in this. So it's very middle, high school, this, and then we've got some TSSAA out of Spring Fling that we'll be reading those too. They should be with us or plan to be with us, I think, Thursday evening, so it'll be a good evening to celebrate.
Looking forward to that. Go ahead with financial matters, if you would.
Okay, financial matters. A is the 2017-18 Centralized Cafeteria Budget, Fund 143. The motion to approve the 2017-2018 Centralized Cafeteria Fund budget needs to be amended to reflect $19,367,000 in estimated revenues and $20,080,425 in expenditures, with $713,425 coming from this fund's balance in order to balance the budget. This is in line with our practice in this fund. We typically have an excess balance which must be used to support this program. Recommend approval. The motion is to amend the 2017-2018 Centralized Cafeteria Budget Fund 143 with revenues of $19,367,000, expenditures of $20,080,425, using $713,425 from restricted for non-instructional programs account 34,570 as presented. And of course, again, under federal regulations, it's a federal hot lunch program, that money has to be kept in that cafeteria fund.
Comments, questions for the Director? Part B.
Part B is property tax change for the 2017-18 general purpose school budget, and this is to align our budget with the Commission's recommendation, I think. The County Commission's Budget Committee voted on May 24, 2017, to move 1 penny of property tax from the GPS budget to the debt service budget. This is a reduction of $574,939 in revenue. We will now be using $7,440,471 from unassigned ending fund balance to balance the GPS budget. Recommend approval. The motion to approve using $7,440,471 from unassigned ending fund balance to balance the 2017-2018 general purpose school fund budgeted with expenditures of $364,221,644 and projected revenues at $356,781,173.
Questions for the Director?
This is our shared portion, of course, of a penny. Which the other remainder goes to the city schools when in that penny.
I was there. There was an original motion was 2 cents, and I think they were going to split it 1.5 and 1/2, and that. Did they vote on that? On the 2 cents, or did they just amend it?
I was thinking they may have voted, but they had had so much discussion that it was they just kind of summarily voted against it, because it was taking
I don't remember.
0.5 cent out of the county general.
Right. Ended up a penny.
I was
I will say that, you know, for me, this affects the way I think about our budgeting process. We've had so many in our county commission share with us that there's confidence in the efficiency of the budget that we bring them, and I certainly feel like it is. We send over exactly what we need and require, including the fund balance amount that unfortunately we're going to have to use to make up this difference. And so it's going to be very challenging. You know, every penny is accounted for, and there will be needs unmet because of this.
You don't remember, Mr. Stanley, whether there was a vote at 2 cents or not. I was surprised, as I think Mr. Stanley, I believe you were surprised at that came up that night. Sort of. Okay. I think the director was surprised as well. Ms. Ely voted against it. It was the only person in the room that voted against it. It passed over the very light objections, but the objections nonetheless of the mayor and the finance director. So this is the direction they wanted to go, and I hope it's not damaging. It may well be, but that's the way it is. If there's nothing else on that, Part C.
C is a differentiated or alternative pay plan for 2017-18. Staff proposes to change Rutherford County School System differentiated pay plan for 2017-18 year and to make our grandfathered EDS and doctorate degrees available for central office administrators who are specialists and supervisors. This change will help us attract knowledgeable and skilled individuals who will supervise educational programs and provide professional development for classroom teachers. We did this for school administrators last year. This just adds the people at the central office. We did this for administrators at the school level. So recommend approval. The motion is to change the Rutherford County School System's differentiated alternative pay plan and open our grandfathered EDS and doctorate degrees to central office administrators who are specialists and supervisors in the 2017-18 school year.
Any questions for the director on number 9?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'm really challenged by this, and not in a manner of I don't think it's the right decision. I'm just trying to see all sides on this, and if there are additional words of explanation or anything of that nature, there's a part of me that looks at this and thinks we're incentivizing doctoral degrees at a place that's outside the classroom, and I'm challenged to see where those extra skills, that extra training are applicable to the tasks at the central office. It may very well be a lack of familiarity with the jobs that are being done at the central office, but I guess that's where I'm coming around to is trying to tie the benefits of the additional degrees to applicable job duties at the central office.
This was initially changed when Commissioner Huffman came in. And so since then we've made school systems each year submit changes to differentiated pay plan. What I'm seeing, if you take a Williamson County or something like that and they're offering it and you aren't, where does that put you? And so that's, some of it is the competitive nature of what's happening today.
Yeah.
So, you cannot do it, but it doesn't position you well to get some of the brightest and best.
So the more information, the more content knowledge they have, that additional years of of going to school in the higher education in their field of study, which is the case, typically, almost 100% of the time. But they come back and work with our teachers that have masters, that have doctors, that also have other, bachelor's degrees and things in their field, and they do the training themselves. For example, a high school, one of our newest ones is our high school science specialist. That science specialist will work with biology, chemistry, and all of those fields, so it behooves us to have that content knowledge when we're working on that. And they're also the people that are heading up those selection of the textbooks that have to know that content. So the greater their content knowledge is, the better off our system is, the better the content is that we're delivering in all of our schools. They work with all of those teachers.
Okay, that helps.
Because that kind of clears it up for me as far as, who these people are and what they're doing. I guess when I'm thinking about if we're incentivizing doctoral degrees for central office administrators who are specialists and supervisors, I guess I'm thinking about all of our specialist administrators work directly with. Okay. Are we putting, and maybe I'm asking this question because I don't know, because I don't get into the weeds of the pay plan and everything. Are we creating a potential that a specialist or supervisor can be making more than their assistant superintendent boss?
It's true, but that's not the only case here. That happens because of number of days very often affects it. When people go from 10 months to many of our administrators is the 11 months or 12, the daily rate may still be higher with their boss. The total number of days can sometimes change that.
Yep. I guess I'd like to really maybe kind of understand the initiative behind this a little bit better, the basics, and I just want to make sure that I'm understanding that if this is put into place, that it means that anyone at central office that has a doctorate degree will have the eligibility for a better, in other words, pay plan.
Any certified person that's under that plan.
Okay, can you elaborate on that? Help me.
Well, you have two pay plans, your classified plan
Right.
and your certified plan. Part of your certified is control, basically is the one we submit to the state to do this. Up until about, and when Commissioner Huffman came in, and actually he dropped it back to, and we've actually added back experience time to another years. He cut it back to 12 years, one at 15, we've added back 20. So over the last several years, we've adjusted for teachers to get other steps and all that were taken away. The real issue now is becoming, Ms. Barnes was telling me this morning that we have close to 300 positions posted waiting for administrators to make recommendations to fill. The whole graduating class at MTSU this spring was 168. And you got every other district looking for people too. So I'm telling you that the pool is nothing like it was a number of years ago.
My mentality is I want us to be competitive, and I know that's important because we're competing with counties and districts all around us, but I also want individuals that are motivated to move forward, that wants to increase their expertise, that wants to increase their knowledge. And I think the old saying is if you're not moving forward, then you must be moving backwards. And I want those individuals that are supervising, that are administrators, that are trying to improve their knowledge set. And I think anything we can do to continue to motivate and pursue that goal is a good thing. And I think we all agree that when Huffman came out with this edict, that it was a mistake across the board. I don't know anybody that agreed with it. So I think it's a correction that we should make, and I hope we will make.
And I totally agree with Mr. Blair. I want to make sure I wasn't misunderstood. I completely agree with the premise that, you know, if we have individuals in the system that are bettering themselves through these higher level degrees that are applicable to their role and to their job, absolutely. I guess really the reason I was kind of asking that question is, and I know this may sound a bit far-fetched, but I've seen it happen before, you know, not necessarily in the school system, but other places, is, and I'll just use kind of a wild hypothetical example here to get my point across, is let's say, and I'll pick on him, he's not here, so I guess that's fair. Let's say Gary Clardy, you know, retires 2 years from now, and we hire someone to fill his position that has a doctorate degree in philosophy. Are we
He's
going to
not
pay?
on that pay scale anyway. He's not on the certified.
Okay, but see, I don't see in the recommended approval, and maybe I'm missing something where it differentiates.
Well, that's the state's term for the differentiated. The whole term differentiated pay scale pertains to the certified pay scale.
I guess, and you understand what I'm trying to say. I want to
do,
make
and
sure
that's
we're not
confusing.
paying
I'm
for higher
sorry.
level degrees that have nothing to do with that person's position or role for the school system.
The state doesn't take a position basically on classified positions. They furnish some monies for certain positions, but they do not take a position in that at all. But they have minimum pay scales and things in the certified.
But your position is that you don't want to see someone get a doctorate in philosophy if they are supervising math and science and that type.
Or construction or something that's
something,
totally
yeah.
unrelated to their position. Certainly, if they've gone to the trouble to get a master's or a doctorate in their discipline that they're managing for our school system, I absolutely agree that, and we need to be competitive. I just want to make sure that we're not going to be rewarding degrees that aren't applicable to the positions.
As far as I know, this only affects one person right now. That would be your new science coordinator, who has an education degree in that and extensive experience in science.
And that would be applicable, certainly, yeah.
I'll just offer my parting shot as well. I understand staying competitive, and I understand that motivation. At the same time, I understand the motivation that not necessarily Commissioner Huffman used, but in that day, the motivation was, don't show me pieces of paper on the wall in order to justify your pay. Show me results in the classroom to justify your pay. And that's a truth that I think is worth making a part of our continuing effort. And I'm convinced that in Rutherford County, we absolutely use that standard. We want to see the results in the classroom. We see the results in the classroom, and as such, those are the people that we promote, and we move into the positions of training others and leading our professional learning communities and all of those kind of things. So I'm very satisfied with that. I never like it when the best reason to do something is we're trying to keep up with somebody else or stay competitive. I like us to be innovative. I know we need a pay package that makes sure that we get the best candidates, but I want to base it on things that show our forward-thinking ability. And so I was hesitant on this, and I appreciate the discussion, and hopefully we'll get the right candidates in the right positions for this. I'm concerned about programs like this that would inadvertently put people at higher rates of pay than their supervisor, for reasons of good working environments, that supervisors feel appreciated and empowered to lead those that they're charged with appropriately.
I would say occasionally you see that even at the school level.
Yeah.
The teacher has, weren't for the additional days for the administrator, especially in elementary, where the index is lower, that you would see, you would find that in several places in the educational realm.
Yeah.
One of the things that we did 2 years ago, don't hold me to that, to address some of that situation, we set a minimum, a floor of a master's with 20 years of experience for principals and coordinators. That was designed to address some of this situation that we would see. So,
Okay.
it's a step that we took.
Any further questions on number 9? Bus contract.
This is an amendment to our bus contract, and this is coming because of legislation from the legislature this year. In the recent legislative session, the state legislature adopted a new law pertaining to buses which, among other things, requires the school system to provide a policy or procedure for the collection and maintenance of bus maintenance and inspections records. Board Attorney Jeff Reed has amended the bus contract, which was previously approved for the 2017-2018 through the 220 through 221 school years, to add language requiring bus contractors to provide maintenance records on their buses within 24 hours upon request of the school system. And the motion is to approve adding the additional section requiring bus contractors to provide maintenance records on their buses as provided in the revised contract as presented. You know, when this went through the legislature, they were thinking mostly in terms of school systems that own their own buses. And since we have private contractors that have their buses, I'll guarantee you they're keeping maintenance records, inspection records, because it's an income tax thing for them. They want to count off that repair. They want to count off what they're doing. So the law requires us to have access to those records. Mr. Reed, do you want to add anything to that?
Law, so we don't have that yet. But we need to go ahead and amend our contract to reflect this for now.
Questions from the board? Number 11.
I don't think they've met. Insurance, either of you, and did not plan to meet until July, is that correct? August, okay. Be a while.
Meeting we had in June, right? June, I've lost the months. Anyway, we proposed that during open enrollment, we move to a passive enrollment, in that when an employee fails to complete their enrollment accurately, they no longer will lose their insurance benefits. Rather, they will stay on the current benefit that they have at that time. Now, if there are new employees that have never had it and failed to do it, then that's a separate issue. But they had the plan benefits and failed to enroll correctly, they will remain on the plan. So that was voted in.
The director did not have number 11 on his agenda, but it was a late addition. And I guess that needs to be read.
The board has been requested to review the May 25th, 2017 decision of the Disciplinary Hearing Authority to uphold the expulsion of a student from Smyrna Middle School. The student was expelled for 1 calendar year under the board's zero tolerance policy for having possession of a weapon on campus. This review is pursuant to the provision of policy 6.317. The policy states that the board shall review the record report and shall, 1, affirm the decision of the DHA, or overturn the decision of the DHA, or grant a second hearing, which would be before the board.
You have your material, I believe everyone has it, and if you don't, Ms. Michaels will get it to you before you leave, but I believe everybody's got where you can read that and make your decision on Thursday. Okay, insurance update, we're done with that. Director's update, do you have anything?
We met, the commissioner had her second of 3 meetings. Today was for the Middle Tennessee superintendents, reviewing some of the ESSA document, the accountability pieces, that sort of thing. The 3 big things that were talked about today was chronic absenteeism is still going to be very large and is a 10% factor in school district grades for students that miss more than 10 days of school. Interesting, the figure across the state of Tennessee, they gave us today that roughly 10.8% of the students are missing 10 to 20 days, and another 3.7% miss more than 20 days. So you're looking at, for 10 or up, you're looking at 13 to 14% chronic absenteeism. So it's an issue. And how do we address it? How do you deal with this? And there's some innovative programs. The state's looking for ways to try to assist school districts in doing this. And, you know, one of the things is really, it kind of comes back to the family, that everybody has to be on board with getting the kid to school. That's just absolutely critical. And it'll be interesting to see how that rolls out, but it is a factor, a 10% factor in school and district grades, starting at the close of the 17-18 school year. The other factor talking about is the Ready Graduate again. We've talked about this some, and if you remember the 21 ACT, or it will be they have to get early post-secondary opportunities, which is dual credit, dual enrollment, industry certification for CTE courses and that sort of thing. Rutherford County is so far ahead in the CTE and the industry certification piece. That will not be reported this fall for the year we've just completed, for the 17 graduating class. And they said one of their reasons is because that many school districts in the state of Tennessee just didn't have anything in place for that, to report any post-secondary or any CTE certifications. So the only thing that will be reported this fall will be pure ACT scores. You do not get letter grades this fall anyway, but it will factor in the next year. So the third factor talking about was focus schools, and that's a requirement that comes down under ESSA, that the state has to have a plan to address focus schools. They've broadened the definition of a focus school a little bit based upon grades and some other factors. It's very similar to the No Child Left Behind, in that the bottom 5% of those focus schools will be the ones that the state will be required with the district to do more intensive interventions in. And you hear of this most often in the Memphis area and the Nashville area, some in the Chattanooga area. But they've actually broadened the definition, so they're saying that it may be that 90-plus school districts will have at least one focus school. That's a very, very different than the half dozen we've been seeing. So kind of tells you they've opened that door to who's a focus. So we'll see how the plan has been submitted to the, of course, the federal government in April. It's 12 states moved forward for the review. So Tennessee should hear something in July, acceptance or rejection or request for change in their ESSA plan, their waiver. So just hold on. We do not know yet. As far as I know, the state does not know anything until they get that contact back.
Director, let me make sure that I heard you correctly. Chronic absenteeism is being defined as 10 or more absences in a school year, right?
It's 10 or more days that the student is not present. It would not, school suspensions will count in that. And absences will count in that. Excused or unexcused will count in that. What will not count if a student is placed in an in-school suspension or a student is sent to an alternative school. Initially, that was going to count, but they have changed that to say they're really not out of school. They have a different program, but not out of school, so that will no longer be incorporated.
At one point, we also talked about the possibility of this being time with a highly qualified teacher in the classroom, but that's not part of the equation right now, am I correct?
Highly qualified basically went away with No Child Left Behind.
Okay.
That was a measure that's kind of gone. There were some other interesting pieces of the discussion today, and I'll just throw one out to you. I know Dr. Looney from Williamson County, and we have some of the same thing. Parents very often in their senior year take their kids to visit a college or university. And does that count as an absence? They're not at school. They said, well, maybe you want to use field trip. Well, I have trouble using the code for field trip because it's not necessarily school-sponsored, and does that extend to liability? Who's taking them to that? So I hope the state will consider adding additional codes I mean, you have excused, unexcused, you have suspensions, you have expulsions, you have a field trip code, which field trip code basically, they're not in the building, but they may be off at a CTE competitive event, you know, but that's a school field trip sponsored. So hold on. They took notes, and we'll see how all of that begins to roll out, but it affects many things.
And did you report that currently we would see 13 to 14% of our student body at 10 or more absences was?
That was the state figure.
That was a state figure.
That was the state figure. And I'm not sure I could say today exactly what our chronic absenteeism is, but it'll surprise you if you take that 10-day for all types of absences. You know, and it bothers me a little bit that, what if the doctor gives them a note? We also brought up to the commissioner today, you have children that are chronically ill, and they're going to be out a lot. This needs to be looked at before you drop the hammer on some of this thing. It needs to be looked at and say, are there some exceptions that this shouldn't even be included? That maybe we need to broaden this more to the unexcused side or something there. But that varies from district to district. So, for example, you allow parents up to 10 days at the parent's cognizance that can say, my child was sick. You don't have to run the doctor. We'll give you 10 days during the school year to say, Johnny was sick, throwing up this morning, I kept him home. But what we allow may not be what is allowed in XYZ district. Do they allow more days, less days? So one of the things that the state doesn't define a lot of this is they run into, it's not the same from district to district. So how does that stat, how do you then give a grade or a factor into a grade for a school or a school district when you have that type of diversity? And I don't know.
As this is apparently going to be something that the state is going to track and report the expertise or lack thereof of a district in meeting this, the more information that you could give us as a board as to where we are in an overview type standpoint, I would be curious if 13 to 14% is the state number. By the most liberal definition, what our Rutherford County number would be of 10 or more absences from our student body.
We can get that. I would say it's going to be higher than you think. But when you take kind of their definition of all types of absences and you include suspensions and all in it, I mean, I'm afraid to give you a guess today, but I'm not sure it'll be drastically different from that 10% number anyway.
What triggers in-home services for a student?
We have a committee that meets in it, but it's typically doctor statements. If a doctor sends us medical documentation that is this child is not medically fragile or has some
Chronic.
ailment or chronic illness, that we need to provide homebound service. Now, any child that goes on homebound services is present. So that has and still is an issue that wouldn't be a part of it. Have I left out anything, Ms. McLeod? Because I know we deal with this on a basis. Is that?
How long should we provide the services so that we can get back to school as quickly as possible? But we provide homebound services, hospitals sometimes, just depending on what a student needs.
You know, I did see another state law, and I don't know how this is going to roll out this year, about school districts providing more for incarcerated students. Has that one rolled anything out from TSBA or anything on that one yet? It'd be kids at our local jail and juvenile detention and some other areas. So they've expanded that.
There's a federal funding change in the way that's being handled.
Okay.
Sharing of funds and of federal funds that are being required this year, and that, for example, juvenile detention is delinquent and some other student categories there that we are mandated to share federal funding with.
Right. It's more of the flow of that piece was already going to juvenile detention. It will be coming through the school board's budget.
We'll have to handle it instead of that.
And then we will reimburse the county for those expenditures.
Hang on for the legal conference this summer. We'll find out what all did pass, I guess.
It's going to be a problem, obviously, but not only for the obvious reasons, but for the following reason: a majority of the youngsters that are in juvenile detention are from other counties. So we're going to have to meet their curriculum needs somehow. I don't know how it's going to work, but.
Center is housed to be responsible for the education of those children. So that's exactly what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
No longer is they're from Bedford County and being held in our facility, is Bedford County responsible for the education. Our LEA would be, it's the house where the children are housed. So that we're already doing some of that and providing funding for some of those things, so it won't have quite as big an impact on us probably as some other places, but there is a legislative change.
That could require extra personnel, which we've handled some of it through the kind of the homebound contract stuff, things we do, but special ed becomes another factor.
Right, we do. We've always provided it for special ed students because that's been required under federal law, but this is a state law that sort of expands that to all students in juvenile detention centers.
Well, obviously we'll discuss it at whatever length you want to discuss it, but I can't let attendance go by without, since it is my pet peeve. And I think the board pretty much shares that feeling. But we can talk about all this, excused, unexcused, parent notes, ball games that start at 3 o'clock and they'll leave at noon to get there when they could be playing at night, or they're on trips and field, whatever. We can talk about all of that. The truth is this: if the student is not in the classroom, the system begins to break down. Period. End of discussion. Now, they can come back the next day, had the flu, they missed 3 days, they can get their makeup work. That is true. And hopefully, they'll do that work. Hopefully. But they still miss the instruction, and they can never get it back. And I think that what Mr. Odom just said, that we might be surprised at the number of absences and at our percentage, is regrettably correct. I think we may meet the state average if you count everything. And I think it's very alarming. And we've got some business people in this room. Now, I'm not a business person, okay? I'm an educator. We got business people here. Boy, their advice is invaluable. If they had employees that missed 13% of the time, they wouldn't be employees for very long. And it's just a real problem. And I think sometimes maybe the parents may share in considerable amount of responsibility for this. But I'm shutting up now. I know you're glad that I am.
As a board, we have expressed alarm as we became more aware of the number of teachers that were out of the classroom and the crisis that we had in substitute teachers and their availability to be in that classroom. And we have enjoyed over the past year and a half or so, maybe 2 years, to have a better fill rate for substitute teachers in that circumstance. But we haven't done that by accident. I mean, we have made that a topic of discussion, a bit of a board priority, and we certainly should continue in that direction. As we're talking about this, I'm reminded of the efforts that took place at John Coleman Elementary, and I'm sure that they were afoot this time last year. But before the start of school, the faculty at John Coleman Elementary visited every single student's home. And when we talk about how do we express to that family, it's important that your child be at school. It is noticed when your child is not there. We care about your child. John Coleman Elementary did an outstanding job of expressing that sentiment with an extraordinary over and above effort. But if there is another elementary, middle, or high school out there who has a creative idea that they feel like that they would like the permission to go and execute, I certainly want to say from my seat on the board, this focus by the state of Tennessee is a catalyst to do it. Bring it to your director of schools, bring it to your board, and say, here's our plan. Can we go into action? Because making it a priority in Rutherford County Schools that we again lead the state in attendance is apparently going to be something that the state's going to take notice of, and I always want to shine bright when the state takes notice.
Using kind of what you said, I am surprised at the number of teachers now that are actually filming themselves for YouTube to help some of these kids catch up. It's amazing what people are trying to do to address it on their own initiative.
Well, it's very difficult, impossible, in fact, to have any interaction, one-on-one or otherwise, with a student if they're not there. I mean, I think that's, so that's, a serious problem. I just wish there was some way we could pay more attention to that, and we have made great inroads with the substitute teacher, and getting qualified individuals and having a fill rate that is about, it covered evidently about half what we needed to cover in this first year. And so I might also point out that in some areas, well, I guess all the time, we are trying to affect the teacher as best we can and holding them responsible for the education of the student, and the student's not there. I mean, I just don't really understand that now. He doesn't know I'm going to say this about him, but Mr. Zago, when you were principal at Stewart's Creek, I happen to know, since we discussed it in your office some years ago, that if there was a student absent, you found out why and often went to get them. Am I right on that?
Sir, I have gone to students' homes and helped them get to school.
Find their way to Stewart's Creek. Now, you can't always, I understand. I know it's 2017, and I know that you got all kinds of problems. But I know Mr. Reed, W. Reed, and he was assistant principal at Riverdale, my boss, and he was my principal at Rockvale. And I don't know how many students we had, maybe 300, I don't know, something like that from first grade on. And there wouldn't be but 4 or 5 students absent on any given day, and he knew where all 4 of them were. And if he didn't, he found out. He also knew where they lived. Well, I know we can't do that anymore, but boy, I sure wish we could get these kids to school every day. And I mean, 10% is 18 days a year. That's a lot of instruction. I mean, that's almost a month of instruction. That's 10%.
I have a number from Mr. Odom, if you want it, from December. I was looking back to see when my last one that I had. We've been working on this project for the past 2 or 3 years, working with principals. We've even added a report to our iNow, our Student Information System program, to where schools and school teachers can hit a button and it will print a chronic absentee list automatically of 10% of school from the beginning of school date to that day. I have a December one where it's 11% of our students, just slightly over 11% of our students were chronically absent. They had missed 10% of the first semester of school.
Mr. Odom, a truant student, do they not go with their parents before the juvenile judge?
Truancy is a status crime, and they have not expanded greatly the juvenile system in Rutherford County, and we kind of get a quota or a number that we can submit, that number of cases they can take. But I can say, from my experience over the years, because it carries a fine statutorily, if judges would do that, that word spreads really quickly. but it's not happening across the state particularly because of, but court cost alone, even if you have to go and you have to pay the court cost, gosh, I don't know what court cost is now, but it's well over $100.
It was $154 the last time I had a parent with me.
Even if you were not guilty, almost, but
In-
you're gonna be guilty.
I mean, can we not, do we not have the authority when a child is chronically absent or we consider truant, can we not file the
We do.
juvenile petition? But I
Yeah,
mean,
we do.
okay,
We
but
file
I mean,
petitions, yeah.
do we have to worry about a quota? I mean,
Yes, sir. Because the court's gonna build their docket around, and it just, again, there's so many juveniles that, I mean, you read it in the paper, this status crime versus, what's the other term?
well,
Delinquent crime.
then we're handcuffed because as far as an accountability factor, that is probably predominantly one of our best opportunities.
Larry, I want to shift it just a little bit. A lot of times we get students in school with a positive instead of the consequences. Yes, I know we need the consequences, but we improve school attendance through relationships and working with them and trying to figure out why it is. Because most of our students don't want to miss school. There's other life that's happening around them. And if we address that life, typically they are happy to be in our buildings and happy to be with our exceptional teachers and happy to receive what we're offering for free that they can't get anywhere else for free. You know, and we've discussed the value of an education. They understand that, but they have a lot of life, and we're addressing that. And we found that John Coleman and other schools like that, when we address those needs, we are getting students and we're increasing. And we've been tracking this over the course of the year, and it's been improving by addressing things in that direction.
That's an excellent point. Mr. Young?
I think there is a correlation here with school and then the workforce, like Mr. Jordan was talking about. I just had a discussion before I started the school board meeting where we had 50% turnover on one of our shifts, and the number one reason is attendance, is the reason these people are being terminated. So,
And they have children in school, right?
and it's sad that they're losing their jobs over attendance, but that's what's happening.
I was with a major CEO today, and if I said it, all of you would know. And he kind of almost started our conversation. Are y'all having trouble really getting teachers and people in school? We can't get our workers to come to, on a regular basis to work. He said it's really becoming an issue for us.
They've lost a work ethic somewhere. How we lost that, but we've lost it.
Anything else, Mr. Director, on your update? Okay, number 14, Ms. Moore, anything, since they adjourned and tensions eased and everyone's smiling, you have anything?
Nothing to report.
Nothing to report. Anything going on at Potomac River there? And I already know the answer to this, but go ahead, Mr. Holliday.
Well, unfortunately, I'm not going to be in attendance on Thursday night. I will be in Cookeville at Tennessee Tech at parent orientation, and so they're going to tell me how I'm going to be a parent. So that's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to that, though. But because of that, I'll go ahead and share a little bit from the federal side. One thing that caught my attention was there's an audit of Pell Grants and approvals of federal loans that is going on in the Department of Education, and the results of that audit are not favorable. Some discrepancies, grants that did not meet the appropriate qualifications that were put forward anyway, and they say that they're shining the light and draining the swamp and all of these things and such. I think that it's appropriate for our guidance counselors and parents, even our juniors and seniors in our high schools, to be aware that extra attention to the accuracy on their forms and making sure that all of their applications are exactly correct will go a long way. There may be some additional scrutiny on some of those financial aid forms looking toward post-secondary So I raise that for the community's attention.
Picture of Cabinet Member DeVos on the internet today, and I did not read it, but the caption was, he was testifying, and the caption was that the cuts in education that are coming were alarming but necessary. So you can go back and turn your computer on and see how alarmed you are and whether you agree with the necessary or not. Yes, sir.
And yes, the 2 cents was voted on and failed.
Okay.
I remember the vote. But is this 7 cents over 2 years?
Well, 4 cents last year went to debt service, 1 cent moved to our capital projects fund.
That's right.
And then this year, another penny.
So it's 6 total.
It's been 6, but yeah, the capital projects go to help us in some areas where we need the help.
Anything else, Mr. Holliday?
No, I'm good for Federal Relations Network for sure.
Number 16 is general discussion by board members, and the floor is open for just about any topic.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I may, just expanding on your comment on the article about Betsy DeVos earlier today, I would encourage any of the board members that haven't yet to go online and look at it. It had some interesting detail in it, not only about where the cuts were going to take place, but where there was going to be additional funding put towards which, of course, a lot of was school choice. So I find it fascinating where they're cutting and where they're purporting that they're going to beef up things. So it's an interesting article.
Well, there's never any end, of course, to challenges, but I'm afraid that one of them in the immediate future may be how we as a board are going to attack, if that's the right word, to replace funding for possible cuts on programs that we consider vital and really not just vital, critical. And we may have to start looking at that very soon. I will see what comes down the pike, but it may not be pleasant, particularly when you start, and we've already done a little bit and addressed this a little bit with Title I funds and things of that nature. I think that's going to perhaps expand. We shall see. Any other general discussion by board members?
I had the opportunity to attend a function where several either announced or reported to be in consideration gubernatorial candidates were present and shared some ideas. I was struck by the fact that every single one of them reported that they were in favor of school choice. I don't believe they understand what they're talking about. And I believe strongly that the winning candidate will be the one who says to the state of Tennessee that all the students matter to them, not just those selective ones that may be the beneficiary of a voucher program that has never been able to be figured out in legislation and has not passed. But as a board, we're going to have to continue to fight this fight and ring this bell and argue these points that walking away from failing schools for unproven possible alternatives is a bad idea. And I think we should be encouraged because year after year, as we have fought this fight, we have held it off in the state legislature, and they cannot figure out a way to make it work. The evidence is mounting for the lack of performance of this voucher program, and as we interact or have the opportunity to interact with gubernatorial candidates who will come to Rutherford County, as we are absolutely the most dynamic place in the state of Tennessee, more things happening here, more growth, more opportunities, more economic development than anywhere else in the state of Tennessee. They will come here, and as board members, we should be present to say to them, don't you dare put forth a voucher program.
We're going to get an opportunity to do that before then, before they come here. I believe a large number of gubernatorial candidates are going to be at the school law conference and are addressing us on Thursday night.
Correct.
So it's going to be hard to hide in that room,
Yes, sir.
and I'm looking forward to it.
Absenteeism is 10.10% with our increase in population over the year, and the great work from the teachers and principals, it actually went down instead of going up. And it ranged from schools to just over 2% in some of our schools to 19% in one of our schools.
Could we get a printout on
I'll give
that?
it to Mr. Odom, and he
Tends to run highest in your alternative schools. And a little bit away because of second chance schools.
Other comments from anybody? If not, just remind you, Thursday night, of course, 5 o'clock, we'll be right back here where you have your, you can expect I'd say a lengthy meeting that night, okay? I mean, we have a number of, really almost all of them pleasant at least, and some of them just downright great to do that night. So I'm looking forward to that. 15th, we have a budget meeting. Ms. Sandig, I understand you're going to have some amendments perhaps that night, and that will be our last look at it, probably. Okay, that's on Thursday the 15th. Notice we do have a meeting change, and it was changed from, I forget the date that it was changed from, you told me. Was it June the 17th it was changed? I don't remember, but we do have one on a work session on the 21st, which is not on your original laminated schedule. So 21st and 22nd, and got zone exemption meetings on the 19th. Well, we're going to be busy in June, aren't we? And we have a policy committee meeting. Ms. McLeod is in charge, has her lawyer voice in fine tune on that night, and so we will review some policies with her. And then, of course, we are off. Hopefully, the budget will pass and county commission, and then we will celebrate our country's birthday and be back together in late July. Did I miss something? I did well. Whoa! Make a note of that, Mr. Blair. Somebody, please. Got a compliment from Miss Michaels. Anything else? I really appreciate all the input tonight. Thank you so much. We are adjourned.